recording here, and here we go. So, everybody, welcome to the next chapter in a Free Thinkers Corner. May is for Mystery Writers series. Tonight we have Nicole Asselin from around the Boston area. She's originally from Connecticut, lived in Pennsylvania for a little while, but now is back here in New England. She is I really have got to learn to write better so I can read it. She has a degree in English and creative literature or writing, and she did a minor in college in dance. She worked for the government and healthcare, and she's now a technical writer. And she's also a member of the Mystery Writers of America and Sisters in Crime.
Mhm.
And Sisters in Crime, she's the social media liaison, which we'll get into what that is. I mean, it's probably self-explanatory, but we'll see. And she is also a proud member of Red Sox Nation. And my condolences are I'm sorry. Just kidding.
Not right now.
I'm
We're
just
doing
kidding.
good right now. Like we won one out of the series. I'll take it.
Well, Nicole, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're welcome, and thank you. And so I'd like to start off with that. So you, Red Sox Nation, that's a big part of your life. Your grandfather introduced you to Red Sox Nation. Tell us a little bit about that. How did you go to the games, or?
Yeah, my grandfather was from New Hampshire, Nashua, and grew up New England his whole entire life, and raised my dad, and my mom entered their family when she was 16. So pretty much he raised my mom too, in Red Sox Nation. Now they lived in Meriden, Connecticut, which for those that know Connecticut, it's smack dab in the middle. And at the time there was no Nessun down there. They got the Yes Network, which seems a little biased, but whatevs. And we used to go, and we would come for summers to visit. We would sit on the back porch and listen to the Red Sox games, Joe Castiglione. And I just kind of fell in love with it. And also that, it was something that me and my grandpa could talk about, and it kind of just indoctrinated us from there. And I think when you have that kind of familial experience with somebody, it just embeds on you. And I'm so happy we went with the good side and not the evil empire. So I will take that. Although my dad is at a Yankees game tonight, and I'm like, if you don't start a Yankee suck cheer, Dad, I don't know if I can talk to you again. So we'll see if that happens. But yeah, I almost prefer to listen to the games on the radio instead of on watching. I mean, I like to watch them on TV too, because who doesn't love Dennis Eckersley telling people about throwing cheese and high gas. But yeah, Joe Castiglione has been a part of my auditory life for so long that I can't not listen to it. And I, live and die. I went to college in Milton, Massachusetts, and I was there in 2003 when Aaron Bleeping Boone happened. And then I graduated in May of 2004. So I was back in Pennsylvania when we won the World Series, and that was kind of like a bummer, because I was like, oh, I was so close to being there when it happened. But I remember staying up till 2-3 o'clock in the morning for all those games, and just the deep breath afterwards. Felt so, and my grandfather was still around, so it was nice to let him have it, and we all kind of so still to this day, I will always be. I love all sports, but the Red Sox are number one.
Yeah, my grandfather I used to play baseball here in New Hampshire, and every year, as a kid, and so every year we'd go and we'd have the bleacher seats, and
back when they were $10.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So we would meet. My father would drive and meet my grandfather halfway. He would take me to the games,
Awesome.
And then I would go back with him to Western Mass for a couple-week vacation during the summer, and then meet in Fitchburg to swap cars again. So I remember, getting the program, getting the little bag, getting the hot dog and pop and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of my grandfather doing that.
My little ice cream helmet.
Oh yeah, yep.
Those, got to keep those all the way around.
I had those too.
Mm-hmm.
I had those too. So do you go to the games now, or do you just primarily just I
I
know
don't as much anymore. I've kind of turned, well, I just learned today that I'm technically considered a geriatric millennial, which I don't hate because I am an old person trapped in a millennial's body. Like I like to go to bed early. I like, my cat is trying to nudge in. But yeah, so a lot of times like night games are a little too late for me.
Mhm.
I listen to the Red Sox to fall asleep. And they're a little expensive. A couple years, I used to work in South Boston, and I had friends at the time. We would win tickets from like Twitter contests. So we would take a half day from work and go to day games, which was always super fun. But I haven't really, since the pandemic, haven't really thought about going to sporting events
Right.
in a while. It's still that hurdle of, oh, there's a lot of people there kind of
Well,
thing.
you talking about yourself being a geriatric millennial really ages me, because I was in high school when the catch was missed around the world,
Oh,
when they lost
bummer.
that World Series. Yeah, so that's as far as I'm going to go with my
Yeah.
age. But so in college, you were an English in creative writing major. What type of creative writing did you do?
Well, back in that day, in my youth, I was a very angsty poet. So a lot of poetry, straight out of high school into college. Was published in our college arts magazine for a poem that I wrote about the dance studio, because that's was my second home in college. And then it kind of morphed into um, more mystery, romancy genres as you age out. And then I stopped writing for a long time because, well, then I had to like work and be an adult and pay bills. Um, so it took the creative writing, it took me a while to get back into it, which is kind of weird to say, but yeah, so back then it was more poetry, but I always have been a mystery fan. My grandmother was always had a stack of like 5 mysteries on her table next to her while my grandfather watched the game.
Mhm.
She would just breeze through Agatha Christie's like nobody's business. And so I got that love of reading from that side of the family and never looked back. And then when, after being in the real world and being an adult, um, I went to a mystery writer conference, and it kind of reignited that love of telling a story that I want to read. And so that's what it kind of came back around, which was really, really cool. And I worked at the library for all 4 years. So I was always surrounded by books and just always kind of reading and doing stuff. And it's always been the first love in my heart.
Yeah, I love libraries, and I actually thought about going back and get a master's in library
Me too.
science or whatever it's called. But
Yeah.
I spent all my time just trying to keep a bookstore running.
Well, that's, yeah, for
That's
sure.
almost as good, right? It's almost as good. At least then I could take, if it fails, I could just take the books home with me, and I've got my
Exactly.
own
There you
personal
go.
library already. So what kind of dance did you do, and why did you decide to go with the writing instead of the dance?
Um, I was always a little too short to be a dancer, like in full-time dancer. I'm 5'4", so a little shorter than the average ballerina. And I was a Navy child, so we moved around a lot. So it kind of, my dance training was a little disjointed because I would always be at a new studio. But in college, I met at Curry College in Milton. I met my professor, Barbara Scholes, who was a former Boston ballet dancer. And she reignited the love for ballet. And so I got really heavy back into ballet twice a week. And then other dance classes, tap, jazz. I never really got into modern. It was a little too loosey goosey for me because I think I studied ballet too much, where I was like, what do you mean I can flex my feet? No, I can't. And to this day, ballet is still, it's a weird, I'm a baseball ballet fan. So like, I love the sports, but then I also love going to the Boston Ballet whenever I can. And if there's no game on, I'll listen to ballet music to fall asleep. So and like I said, if I could have done it, I don't know if I have that type of work ethic to be a ballerina, because they work so hard. And with writing, I can do it in sweatpants. I can't really dance a pas de deux with sweatpants on.
Hmm.
So I think it kind of, that made a decision easier for me to, again, because I needed to make money, I needed to get a job, I needed to move out, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
You kind of had to make the hard choices when you had to. And so I moved to tech writing. So it still had a little writing in it, but not as creatively.
What what kind of ballet music? Who's your favorite composer?
My personal favorite ballet is Giselle. So I do listen. I have a lot of it on my, well, it's not an iPhone, but YouTube music. Pretty much all the classics. I love the Sleeping Beauty. I love the Giselle. What's the other one? We saw my friends and I, when I worked in Boston, back when I was a younger millennial, we would go to the Boston Ballet for like Halloween. We would just go as a group of friends and we saw Swan Lake. The only one I'm not as big of a fan of, controversy ahead, is the Nutcracker. Not a big fan. I'll go watch it. Don't love it. So if tweet me if you have other thoughts about that.
We used to take our kids up to Portland every
Yeah,
year when they were little to see, when they were young,
yeah.
to see, and it made a family day.
For kids, I think it's perfect because
Yep.
they're short little vignettes. I like a story. I like a whole thing, and I love an evil witch, and you can't get any better than Giselle and the Willies, and they just scorned women. It's perfect.
Swan Lake.
Swan Lake is good. Not my favorite. Love the Swan Lake finale is one of my favorite pieces of music. So
Okay.
yeah.
So you mentioned Halloween. When I was going through your preparing for this and going through your website, I saw a video of you that you had posted in a witch's hat and the long hair, and you mentioned that it would take too long to grow all that hair and stuff. But you did mention something about you like tarot cards and tarot reading, things like that. You like the whole Salem thing, and
I do. I haven't gone as much. Like, it's so weird living in Massachusetts. You would think we would go more because it's like an hour away. I'll just pop up to Salem, but I never go. But I do love the whole mystical, kind of mind body connection. So I do have a lot of tarot cards. My tarot cards are like Friends themed or Golden Girls themed. I like a good 90s reference. And in book 2 of my series, one of my good friends, she actually created 3 tarot cards for the book. So custom artwork, which is pretty cool. And I was really glad I got to put that in the book to show a little different side, of that it's not so creepy. It's kind of just intuitive, and you can read what you want into it. And I like the idea of kind of manifesting your own kind of destiny and things like that. I think as I get older, I find that it's a little bit easier to kind of move yourself in those directions, to trust yourself to do things instead of just like, oh God, is this what somebody wants me to do? Ooh, that's the only good part of being an adult, not the bills. The bills
no,
are
not the
bad.
bills. So we have a couple. We have a lot of people actually asking us if we have tarot cards, and so we finally got a couple sets in. One's based on myths and legends and fairy tales, folk tales, things like that. But another one we got, which you may want to check out, we have it on our website, is tarot cards for writer's block.
Oh,
Essentially, it's for writer's block. So it's a small press. I don't remember where they're from, but we have had to get a couple local authors books from them,
right.
and they have these tarot cards, and they're for to help you. There's a book along with it, and
Got
it
it.
goes
Yeah.
along the traditional tarot cards, but there's writers, authors, pictures on them that I guess represent the different genres and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's something to check out. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
And I don't know if you've had other authors talk about this, but the pandemic has been hard for creativity. So
Yeah.
that might be a tarot deck that would be helpful at this point, just to kind of push through some of those blocks, which definitely happen.
Yep, yep. So in that video though, and this was a question, you had mentioned something that you don't like the thriller, the blood and gore, that type of thing. You liked more of the the mystical
Yeah.
aspect of sort of Halloween. Is that why you went mystery writing instead of thriller? Well, let me rephrase that. Your type of mystery writing versus the like Connie's last night. Hers is
Right.
more the terrorism, espionage, that type of that type of thing. Is that why you?
I think I gravitated more towards cozies, not just because this is going to sound really bad, but I don't want to have to do a lot of forensic work to write my books. I don't want to have to learn what kind of brain matter does whatever. Like that seems like, I mean, I watch a lot of like Bones and, Grey's Anatomy, but that's a little too much for me. And I think I also gravitated towards cozies because it's more realistic, I guess is the weird term in a mystery, but it's everyday people. It's not somebody who's studied counterterrorism for years, or not somebody who's like carrying a gun all the time. It's a person who just is going to work every day and something extraordinary happens to them, but they don't need any, not to Liam Neeson it up, but like they don't need special skills. They just use their own skills. And I think it's also a lot of, I know what I like to read. I don't want to read about somebody's innards. I want to read somebody got murdered or poisoned, or something happened over there. Let's get into more of the thinking part of it, because I think that's a little bit more digestible for me. Yeah, I'm not a big horror person. I don't watch a lot of horror movies, and even sometimes Grey's Anatomy I have to fast forward a lot through because I'm like, well, that's too much blood. No.
Well, that was one of the terms that came up when I was looking at the mysteries in general. People, when we first opened the store, people would ask, do you have any cozies? I'm like, I don't really know what a cozy is. I know a mystery, like an Agatha Christie or and actually and even some of the other ones that probably are cozies,
right,
but just not realizing the
right.
term. And there's a lot of terms in a lot of genres that I'm very thankful of this job now that I know, and so I can point people in that direction. So so in this case here, this is an actual cozy where it's kind of on the lighter side of the mystery genre.
Yeah, I think sometimes the word cozy gets a bad rap because people think old lady with her, like I love her, but Jessica Fletcher, Murder, She Wrote, an older woman just kind of butting her nose into things. And I think cozies are just really, like I said, everyday people stumbling into weird situations, and people like that. I mean, how many mystery shows are on TV where it's just like some person who happens to know a detective who I mean, how popular is Hallmark murder mysteries and movies right now, all those Hallmark movies? So I feel like cozy, it's kind of a comfort thing that you can read it and it doesn't necessarily give you nightmares. It's not going to make you, look at your neighbor cross-eyed, like, could that person be a murderer? Unless you live in one of these small towns and or Cabot Cove where everybody dies. It just gives you that. It's like somebody described it, I can't remember who, but it's like a warm cup of tea on a cold day. Like it's just comfort. And that's kind of why I wrote it. It was comfort for me, and it's comfort for a reader who likes baseball and they just want to see like a 30-something-year-old person in that world kind of see how they work through things. And so I love the cozy genre. It's one of my favorites. I probably read it more between weirdly cozy and fantasy are my two right now. So I don't know what that says about me, but definitely. But then I am so impressed with people like Hank Phillippi Ryan and who write twisty 3-day thrillers. And you're like, what the F just happened? Like those people impress me so much because I don't think I could tighten something up like that. I like a story that kind of draws over a couple of days, and it's not a sense of urgency other than let's find this killer so he doesn't kill again, which is pretty urgent, but
You mentioned towards the beginning there that your grandmother had a stack of things, and I did read that your grandmother was a big influence on you reading and writing mysteries, because that's what other kinds of other than Agatha Christie's, what else did she read? What do you read now?
Oh gosh, everything.
Everything.
This is my to be read bookshelf section. Like these are all the books that I need to keep reading.
I see you had some Clive Cusslers over there.
I love Clive Cussler.
Well, good. If you need some more, we have tons of them in the store.
Good to know. I will be making a trip. Yeah, and Clive Cussler I like because it's like this is so gendered and I hate saying this, but it's like the men's cozy, because like you kind of know what's going to happen. You kind of know the story. And it's just like go, 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 go. And I can read it in a weekend because you just fly through it. You're like, oh my God, what's Dirk gonna do now? Like, love it. But Yeah, I think she would always read. I don't remember specifics. I know she would read the mysteries. My grandfather was always in the westerns, so it was kind of like bridging that gap. For cozies for myself, I love Sheila Connolly was one of my favorites with her County Cork mysteries. She's since passed, but it, I am kind of mildly obsessed with moving to Ireland at some point in the future. So those mysteries have always kind of piqued my fancy. Kate Carlisle, who writes the Bibliophile mysteries, that is one series that actually kind of propelled me to want to write my own kind of story because I just fell in love with hers. I'm trying to think, oh my God, this is like the writer's question. You get so nervous. You're like, what am I reading? Anna Lee Huber writes historical cozy type mysteries.
Okay.
So she has the Lady Darby series, which I got the most recent one, A Wicked Conceit. And she also has the Verity Kent, which is World War I, which is another fun, another strong women doing amazing things in a time period where they probably aren't expected to do amazing things. So I'm kind of all over the map with reading. I do belong to Book of the Month, so that kind of broadens the spectrum a little bit. I have the new one, Ariadne. I think it's like a Greek mythology retelling or Roman mythology. I'm trying to look at all my books here. Yeah, so I think reading everything helps writers and authors because you kind of get an idea of your voice by reading other people's voices. Because you can say, oh, I don't identify with that, but I do identify with this. Maybe I'll try something like that. And I like to just be eclectic about it as much as possible.
Now you like to read in your car
Yeah, well,
on your lunch breaks.
I was just going to say, this was pre-pandemic times when we actually went into offices. I do not go into the office anymore, so it's a little bit different at my house. But yeah, I would take just that time. You only had a half an hour lunch. So, I'd go get my chicken fingers down at the cafeteria. And if it was a beautiful day like today was, I would just go sit in my car with the windows down and you just get like 2 or 3 chapters banged out and eating your chicken fingers. And it's like the perfect relaxing time to be away from like real stuff. You get a moment to say, I don't want to think about healthcare right now. I want to read about Lady Darby and her super cute husband. Like I don't want to do any real work. So yeah, sometimes lunch breaks went a little longer when I got into a good chapter.
Well, if you're ever interested in mystery, sort of Western mysteries, there's a local author, James Griffin. He lives out in
Okay.
Keene. He's written a lot of sort of Western sheriff, Wild West type things. And he has another one I was just looking up here, Death by Dressage. But it's all about horses and horse showing and stuff. Yeah, I'm trying to pull up his Western series, but my computer just is terrible. So, but anyways, James Griffin, look into him. He's got some great
that'd be cool.
Great books there. So, so where was I going? So you had mentioned. So let's go ahead and start talking about your book. So I do want to. So your series is called the Ballpark Mystery series.
Yeah.
And the first one's called Murder at First Pitch. Now, yep, right there.
There it is.
Yep, right side. Like, yeah, you're right side.
Somewhere. So bad at that.
So, and it was picked up by what was it, 2018 that it was published?
It was published in September of 2019.
2019, okay.
By Panda Moon Publishing.
Right. So I was looking at that and it said, was it originally supposed to be called Death at First Pitch?
Yeah, I think when they wrote the press release, it was called Death at First Pitch, and I was like, well, no, it's kind of like murder. I don't no, not death. And I think that just was a little miscommunication between me and the publicist.
Okay.
But yeah, so I say it was always Murder at First Pitch. My mom thinks it was titled something else before it got published. I disagree with her, but moms are always right. And I know she's not listening today because she could not figure out how to get into the system. So I can say that. But yeah, she's adamant that it was called something else, wasn't it? I was like, I think it was always Murder at First Pitch. um, and the second one, as of right now, is titled Concession Stand Crimes, and it's with the editor. So I don't think it's going to change, but that's kind of where we're going with that one right now.
Mhm. So it's about a 32-year-old Madeline Boucher. Her grandfather purchases a local independent baseball team, the Abington Armadillos. While walking the ballpark during her early morning hours, she finds the body of a man beaten to death with a baseball bat in the visitor's dugout. It was the man her brother was arguing with at a party.
Mm.
Through a local detective and the head security for the ballpark, she learns the victim is a local baseball scout and prior felon. Hmm.
Mhm.
When her brother is arrested and taken to the police station, she realizes she needs to figure out who the real culprit is so her brother doesn't take the fall for something she knows he didn't do. Now, one thing before we go any further, I was looking on your website, and I love this, seeing these on authors' websites, is you have a trailer for the
Yeah.
book. So I'm going to go ahead real quick and play your trailer.
Ooh.
There we go. There's the trailer for
That's
Murder.
Nicole's super fancy graphic design work. Oh, everybody watch out. She's coming for your jobs. No, she's not.
Well, we'll talk about all the marketing stuff
Yeah.
in a little while, but I love seeing
It was
stuff like that and
cool.
how creative a lot of authors get. So, anyways, so Murder at First Pitch.
Yeah. So Murder at First Pitch, as you said, Madeline Boucher, she's, just your average 30 something. My mom likes to say she can't read it because she thinks it's me. But I mean, it's partially me, but I mean, I have 3 cats. Madeline happens to have 3 cats. I have a brother. Madeline has a brother, things like that. But I don't have a baseball team. So it's not completely me, Mom. I'm like, maybe if you buy me a baseball team, we'll talk. But yeah, I wanted to write a book, like I said, a cozy mystery that's something more my speed. Like I love a cozy mystery about a glass blower. I love a knitting cozy mystery. I love a cooking, but I don't do any of those things. What I do is watch baseball pretty much all summer when it's on. So I wanted to create, and I really thought the Red Sox probably wouldn't love it if I murdered somebody at Fenway Park and took over their stuff. So I was like, you know what? Let's just create a team. I did choose the real town I live in, Abington, which is on the South Shore, because it's a small town, but it's got that close connection to Boston. And there's a lot of things you can play with around here, which is really cool. And one of the best things about setting it in this town is when I first released the book, one of my first events was at a craft fair. And if you bought a book, you got to enter to name a character in the next book. And one of the person who ended up winning, which was purely happenstance, and it worked out beautifully. It was the family of a woman who had lived in Abington probably for like 50 years, was a staple of the community. She had a cookbook from the town. And so I'm really excited for that book to come out, because then their grandmother is now immortalized in it. And it's kind of cool to be like part of a town. As a Navy child, I never really grew up in a town for a long period of time. So I never got that community. And that's why I think cozy mysteries are so great, because it makes you feel like you're part of a community. So I feel the only thing I do have to caveat every time I go to like a library event or an event in Abington, I have to say, I know there's no baseball team in Abington. I know, like, don't come at me like, where's the ballpark? And I'm like, don't come looking for it. It's not there. That is made up. But yeah, it's she, her family owns this team. She has to go back to work for the family, as it happens in most cozies. And all her friends still work there. Her brother still works there. And she just kind of immerses herself back in this world of independent league baseball. And I read a book. My cat knocked it over. It's like she was telling me what to do. And it's called The Only Rule Is It Has to Work. And it was about 2 dudes in California who just bought an independent league baseball team to see how they could make it work. And I read that, and it had all these little things that you don't really think about. Like, all these independent league, minor league, they have to raise so much money because they don't get a lot of the revenue from the major league sports. So one was that every home run or foul ball that somebody caught, if they returned it to the concession stand, they got a free hot dog because they couldn't afford to buy more baseballs. So they wanted people to return them. And I just find those stories amazing. And also the fact some of the stories of the players are amazing in that, they're people who just love to play baseball, but couldn't be the David Ortizes or the Xander Bogarts or the Raffy Devers. They're just, a dude who was better than average, but not, and they really do just play for the love of the game. And so I wanted to keep that community together. One of my other favorite things in the book, it's a little Easter egg, is there's a restaurant in the outfield called Centerfields. And that is an homage to the show Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, where if those fans who watched it, they had randomly a restaurant at a ballpark. So I was like, that was one of my favorite shows. So I was like, I want to put that in there. That's kind of a cool idea. You're at a game, go to the restaurant. Cool. And so, yeah, so she gets home, she starts doing her normal routines, stumbles across the dead body, doesn't have any plans to investigate until her brother starts getting accused of things. And so she kind of stumbles into it. And I also didn't want to make it amateur versus cop, because I do think the detectives are important. They do the real work. She kind of just moves things along sometimes. And that was fun to write because we all think we can solve a murder. We all watch murder mystery shows and we're like, that's the person that did it. I know it. He did this and this and this. So it's kind of fun to write a story where you try to figure that out. And I do not plot. I do not outline before I write. So a lot of times it is like I'm reading the story and going, ha, that's the person that killed him. That's it. And it's like, I should have probably known that at the beginning.
So that was going to be one of the questions that came up a little later. So you're a pantser.
Mm-hmm.
That's another phrase. I learned cozy and I learned
Yep.
plotter, pantser.
I am a
So
pantser.
so where you looked up and kind of read about how amateur leagues kind of work, what they need to do, did you meet and have you met any of the Red Sox players? Did you get to talk to any, even amateur players about baseball? Is there any of that sort of baseball player technical stuff in your book?
Not a ton, because I didn't want to scare away like casual fans of, because I know there's a lot of mystery fans that don't necessarily like sports. So I didn't want to be like, and they, this was his war. Like nobody cares what their war is, wins above replacement. So there is a couple baseball scenes and there's like a couple little like, oh, here's a home run and here's what the players do and here's their video room. For the second one too, I haven't really talked to anybody. The second one was harder because it was drafted or it was finished during the pandemic. So there was no baseball happening really. So that was kind of rough, but the first one I relied on the books. This summer, I'm hoping to get out to the Woo Sox in Worcester. I'm going to try to reach out to them. And down here on the South Shore, we actually have the Brockton Rocks, which is 10 minutes from my house. So I'm hoping that's a little bit more independent-y, where it's not affiliated with any team. It's kind of just let's have fun and play ball. And that's kind of one of those things I would love to, get a deep dive with like players and coach, mainly front office people, because you want to see kind of how that stuff works. With the third book, I am trying to outline. It's not going well because that's not the side of the brain I use, but I do want to get a little bit deeper into the business side rather than the baseball side. So I don't know if I can try to pull something out there. I definitely got some more books. There's a couple of books out there about, players' stories from when they were with the, Albuquerque whatever out in, or what's the good one? The Yard Goats in Hartford is a fun team name. And I think there's a Mud Flaps in Mississippi somewhere. So, I mean, it's just like some of that stuff. And I do follow a lot of minor league baseball teams on Twitter. So I see all the kind of events they do, the 80s night, the Star Wars nights, the 90s nights, all that kind of stuff. So I try to pull things from those if I can't get out to anything, because we're pandemically inclined at the moment.
So a lot of the baseball stuff in your first book is just sort of your experiences,
Yeah,
what
my
you know.
experiences. Yeah.
So now, as where you're trying to outline on this one, you said that side of your brain doesn't doesn't do that. Isn't that the side of the brain that you use for your technical writing?
Maybe. Maybe I'm
What
not
type
as
of
good of a technical writer as I thought I was, Chris. Thanks for bringing that up. No,
sorry. What type of technical writing do you do? If you
I
can,
do healthcare processing. So it's not so much, I do a lot of the steps, but I don't have to like connect them. Somebody else connects them. I just write them, kind of thing. And I hope nobody from work is listening to this, because they're probably like, this is the person we're trusting with our documents right now. She doesn't even do it. Although I know one friend was going to be on there, but she was a good helper. So I'm going to say she's on my team. But no, I think the technical writing side, it's not so much outlining as just getting the steps and procedures so everything works. Outlining to me is a little bit harder, because you get one or two sentences and then have to make, a 200-page book. My technical documents are like 10 pages. So it's a different, I think there's a different way to do it, hopefully. And if you're my boss, sorry. That's how I do it.
um, so when you put your hometown in your first book, um, were you worried that people would
Mhm.
recognize certain buildings, areas, and that wasn't the name of it, or no,
Mhm.
those streets weren't correct, or things like that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, one of my first, I did an event at the Abington Public Library, and it got a good turnout because the book's set in Abington, and I was very excited. And the first thing I said to everybody is like, I know there's no garden store on Main Street. I know. Please just suspend your disbelief. I tried to put in enough that it seems like it could be real. And that people are kind of like, oh, that's the idealized Abington. Like if we could have all the money, the town, the state can give us, we would have a baseball team off, the Griffin's Dairy Farm or whatever. But I think most people have been receptive, and so I'm and the ones that aren't receptive haven't reached out to me. So I'm hoping that stays true going into the next book. I am going to try to move the third book out of Abington for a little while, like get Madeline away from the ballpark, because my fear is I don't want people to think Abington's like, the hometown of murder. So I'm hoping, I don't want to cabot COVID, so I want to move it out. I'm going to move it south for a little while so that people can take a breather in Abington and go, okay, we're good.
Are you looking at particular towns, or is that just something you're going to make up?
Well, so my father and my brother lives in Virginia in Arlington, and my dad lives in Bowie, Maryland. So I'm thinking it's going to be a Maryland or a Virginia thing. I think I changed it to Maryland. I'm looking at my outline right now, and I'm like, I don't know. Where is it? I have Virginia, but I think it's Maryland. I think I've changed it.
um, so you're detective.
Mhm.
How did you come up with that character? Is that based on somebody? Did you do any of the research as far as how detectives work? Did you talk to any detectives, that type of thing?
I didn't talk to detectives, but at the time, she's since retired. My best friend's mother, Donna, worked as dispatcher for the Hanover Police, which is the town next to mine. So before I started writing the murder, essentially, I said, what happens in these small towns when a murder happens? Like, is it just the Hanover PD guy or the Abington PD guy that's going to investigate? And I learned that they do have a detective, but they also bring the stadies in. So I kind of had to learn that Massachusetts has its own way of doing things a little bit. If it's a homicide, the state police are involved from the jump. I didn't talk to any detectives because I didn't make that character a fully a full character. I knew I wouldn't be able to make that a full character. I kind of, I wanted it to be a good cop. I didn't want it to be a bumbling cop, because I do think sometimes that's a thing in cozies or in some mysteries where like, the cops like dropping evidence and throwing things like,
That's what I was going to ask. Is
yeah,
it
I didn't
because
want that.
I think because my mind, it's more of Madeline is the one who
Mhm.
really solves the case,
Yeah.
but and she has to work around this bumbling,
Yeah.
Detective Do Right, or uh,
Detective Stevenson.
yeah.
Yeah, I wanted him to be at least I didn't want her to be like breaking into the, kicking the PD door down and being like, Detective Stevenson, I found this note. I wanted it to be like he's checking in on her, like the ballpark, and saying, oh, we're still investigating. We got this, that, and that. She's like, oh, by the way, I found out this. I overheard this guy talking, and he's like, well, thanks, but could you maybe call us next time and like give us a heads up? I think he's more of the cantankerous detective, less bumbling. Like he's just like, can you just let us do our job and mind your business? Like we don't need you to do this much. In the second book, he's a little bit more nicer because obviously he went through this whole ordeal with her. But yeah, I knew I wanted him to be like the Columbo detective with the trench coat and the fedora, just weirdly, like it's his affectation, and that he had a partner who never spoke. Like, I just think that's funny to me. I don't know. Maybe that's my detective mind, but I didn't want him to be dumb. I knew that much because I feel bad sometimes that they portray him as dumb, and it's like, oh, shucks, we got fooled again. And no, that's not how it happens. Madeline just happens to get information that sometimes other people can't. And
So,
she's nosy, so
well, that
which
helps, I guess.
is a characteristic of the cozies, the nosy sleuth. Yeah.
So another word that keeps popping up, well, throughout all the events that I've done is tropes. So the detective, either the bumbling detective or the detective in the trench coat with the hat, is that a trope that you wanted to stay away from, or do you have some of those in your book that people can, so it makes it more recognizable and comfortable for people who are looking for those type of things?
I love a trope. I could read, enemies to lovers. There's only one bed in the hotel room, like things like that all live long day. I didn't want the detective to act like a trope, but I didn't mind describing him like like kind of being the stereotypical look of a detective, but not act like the dumb detective. And even then, I think in cozies, they lend themselves to tropes because it's always the amateur sleuth who just stumbles across a body, who happens to hear the incriminating piece of evidence while she's sitting at the restaurant. Like, I think those kind of tropes make sense because they lend itself to move the story forward. And people want the amateur sleuth to crack the case. I have never had a problem with cliches, tropes. I'm all for them in every book that I read Clive Cussler. Like, those books are adventure books, but they're all the same pretty much. Different locations, which is great. And you feel like you're on vacation. And so I think I didn't want some of the things like the lazy detective or the lazy cop who just sits with his feet up with the newspaper, or the mother who's kind of like, oh, all the time and stuff like that. I wanted to make the characters real, but we all have moments where we act like cliches. We all do it, so I wanted to make sure that that was in there too, real life.
Now, in the third book, is your Boston detective going to pop up down in Maryland, Virginia, or are you going to have to develop a whole new? Are you developing a whole new character?
I love that you're doing this to me because I'm only 5,000 words in, and she hasn't even left the state yet. I don't think he'll pop in, unless it's kind of what Kate Carlisle does in her San Francisco series. Is the main character kind of develops a relationship with them. And so they call them, to say like, hey, I'm out of town and this weird thing happened. He's like, well, let me call my friend in whatever. So he might make like a cameo, but I think for the investigation part, my plan is to keep that contained down in Maryland or Virginia, whichever one I wrote in the 5,000 words I wrote that I can't remember. But yeah, he might be involved a little bit. The secondary character of Davis, the security person in the book, he might make a little bit more of a robust appearance in the third book. So we'll see. If I can get writing, we'll see.
Right. Was there any surprise characters that you think that people really like that you didn't think? It's just kind of a side character, but some of your feedback and stuff is like, oh, I really love that character. Are they going to continue on, type of thing?
One of my favorite characters, who I did not plan to be like a major part of the story and everything, is Eliza, the front office receptionist, also best friend to Madeline. She's based on a real person that I worked with, Lizzie. And Lizzie knows, so this isn't like a surprise to her. Just very Boston, very South Shore, very iced coffee and Ugg boots, and very much get your shit together language. Wicked accent. In my head, when I read Eliza's character, it's with this wicked accent, like super Boston. And I personally love writing for her because she's kind of that sassy character, but she's also kind of Madeline's conscience to say, like, hey girl, like relax, you're starting to freak out a little bit, like take a deep breath, kind of bring it down a notch. So for me, she was one of my favorite characters to write. In the second book, the character that I wrote for the woman that bought a book at the event for the Abington woman, I love this new character, and I hope to write more of her in the future, because she was really kind of just like a grandmotherly character who runs a flower shop. So it's like just kind of that warm hug. You just when I wrote her, I felt like I was hugging my own grandma, and it's like, oh, I really like this. I also love the parents in the book, and they're still sort of kind of based on my parents, but like the mother Marie is very my mom. So it's kind of some of those characters where you start to bleed through in real life. You're like, okay, like I get it now. Yep, that's a character.
Now, if I knew Liz, would I be able to pick her out of the book, um, other than the characteristics? So, in other words, when you build your character, do you have a mental image of what they look like? Are they tall, are they short? Do they have blonde hair, red hair, that type of thing? When you did this one character here, did you say, Liz, I have to
Mhm.
have that? And would I be able to see those features in the book?
Yeah, I think so. I think especially with Liz, with Eliza, the receptionist, I tried to describe her as best I could to, and I think I have some friends who grew up on the South Shore, born and raised, and they were like, I know that girl. Like I've seen that girl and I know her. And it just, it's kind of that thing where you're like, I can see people that I know. And that's why I tried to write characters that I've seen or that I know, or that like I want to be. I want to be the better version of myself. I want to be Madeline, but
Mhm.
I don't have a baseball team and I don't stumble across murders, thankfully. Yeah, so I think if you looked at like Eliza the character, and let's say you went to a ballpark, you'd be like, that's who she's talking about, that woman right there with the nails and the hair and the iced coffee. Like I get it.
So when you're done writing a part of your book, and so let's just say the detective part, or even with your third book now, where you're talking about the business side of things, when you get sort of those technical aspects written, do you use beta readers to read over those parts to see if it's accurate, or even the baseball
Right.
aspect of it? I know you've been a baseball
Oh,
fan
no.
forever, but there's some technical things that may
Right.
need a little looking over to see if they're on the accurate side, or does it matter?
Um, I haven't yet. The one thing I did do for book 2 is I do have a tarot section where Madeline gets a tarot reading with these cards that my friend made. And I did reach out to the Sisters Enchanted, who are based out of Connecticut, I think, and said, like, is this how a tarot reading would go? And or if I wanted the message to be this, what cards would be pulled and stuff like that. So I wanted to make sure some of that stuff was more accurate, because I'm still in the beginning stages of my learning of what all the tarot is. And they were super bomb about it and gave me great advice. And yeah, and some of the other stuff, I think because I haven't gotten fully into the technicalities of things, I haven't really needed a kind of beta reader for them. Um, I don't want to spoil book 2, so I'm trying to like dance around book 2. Uh, there's a part in book 2 where I reached out to get more information about a certain situation, but I don't have them read the whole section because I don't necessarily, I don't know if I want them to know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
My beta reader is my editor, and I think she will tell me. I reread it several times. They reread it several times, and then my actually the owner of the publishing house, she reads a final draft of it too. So there's like it goes through like 4 or 5 people with the editing and the publishing. So I think I get a good sense of where we're at.
Mhm.
those. Hopefully, we'll see how book 2 turns out. I haven't gotten those edits back yet, so could be wrong.
So I just noticed you have one, two, five baseballs in little cases on the top shelf right above your head there. Are they signed baseballs that you've caught or?
Yeah, well, not caught. A couple years ago, my dad and I went to Winter Weekend in Foxwoods, where they have the players and stuff like that. So I got a nice. This is Joe Kelly, who's no longer with us. Joe Kelly, no longer with us. He's not dead. Oh, let me rephrase that. He's with the Dodgers, so it's like he's dead. And we got Louis Tiant, he was another one to get signed, which is pretty cool. One that I did get signed in person was Brock Holt. Before he left, we were at spring training, and I wish I could go grab my picture. He stood in line with everybody, took pictures with everybody, shook everybody's hand pre-pandemic, and signed everybody's baseballs and stuff like that. So it was really, really cool. Yeah, I'm not. I'm a flincher when the balls come toward me. Whoa, don't hit me in the moneymaker. So my brother's caught a few balls, and then he gives them to me. I'm like the 6-year-old. I'm like, can I have the ball? And so he'll give me some of those. I don't think that's the Brock Holt. I'm not sure who those two are now. Oh, Jim Rice. And then I can't remember who that one was. Whoever 51 was at some point.
So you're also a member. You're a member of the Mystery Writers of America and Sisters in Crime. Do you belong to any other writers groups that kind of help you along to you're stuck with something and you go to one of these groups and say, hey, look,
Yeah.
I'm really stuck on this. How do you deal with this
It's
brick
been a
wall?
lot harder pandemic to meet with writers groups. We had one at the Abington Library, the South Shore Writers Group. I don't think they meet anymore because we used to meet, at the library, and now we couldn't meet. The Sisters in Crime has been great because they also have an organization called the Guppies, which is the Great Unpublished. And you don't have to be unpublished to be a member. There's actually a lot of published authors in there. And that I get a digest every day, and it's somebody going, I want to kill somebody with an ice pick. Where would I get it? Like stuff like that. And so you kind of get that idea. Or it's also like, I was approached by this publishing house. Does anybody have experience with them? So I don't get, attacked by a spammer or whatever. So the Guppies have been one of the best, but Sisters in Crime, everybody I've talked to, I mean, you've talked to a lot of them already for this series. They're quite possibly the nicest, most accepting group that I've ever been a part of, because they really do want everybody to succeed. They know that there's a big space. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that for mystery writers to do. There's a lot of people who like different things. There's still careers that aren't explored in the cozy world that I'm sure somebody can find, or all that stuff. So they really make it comfortable for you to go in and to say, hey, I have this idea, and that's kind of where I got published. I was at Malice Domestic down in Bethesda, Maryland, which is a big mystery reader conference. And I met a couple of sisters, and they're like, A, you should join this, even if you're not published yet. And B, what would you write? That's the first question. If you would write a mystery, what would you write? And I was like, why did nobody ever ask me that before? Because that's genius. And I was like, baseball, that's exactly what I would write. So they're really good at drawing out that the stuff you didn't know that you needed drawing out. And then you're like, it's like breakthrough. And you're like, oh my God, this is exactly what I needed. So yeah, I'm way high on the Sisters in Crime. The
Yeah,
sisters
Leslie.
and the misters.
Leslie, I was gonna say, yeah, there are a lot of misters
Mhm.
in as well. Yeah, Leslie Wheeler had mentioned the
Yep.
Guppies
Yep.
as well. So when you're talking to these some of these people in the group, and an idea comes up, and say, oh yeah, well, I use that in my book. When you go back and now I know there's a lot of tropes and cliches and things like that, and so there's a lot of similarities in books
Sure.
because it's like in music, there's only so many
Right.
notes, so
Sure.
you're gonna hear some
Oh yeah.
similarities between groups and artists and stuff. um when you're editing, did you ever realize that a section, a paragraph, a chapter sounds like something that maybe your grandmother read or somebody in one of the groups had said, and you said, you know what, that's too similar, I need to change that, or no, it's good.
I haven't run into that too much. I think because writing is so individual. It might be an idea might be the same, but I don't think the writing is ever the same. So it might be like a little twist of an idea. Um, I think because we all write, especially in the sisters, we all write such different things. I mean, Edith Maxwell writes the Quaker Mysteries. So she's writing about Quakers. I can't write that. I know I can't write that. It's not something I can experience. Connie writes about horses and the Troubles. Like I would have no idea. So I think even if there's germs of ideas that are similar, I never think it's the same story, because I do think we all write so differently, and somebody reading it might get something completely different than, and I don't think I've ever noticed. I mean, again, tweet me if I'm wrong, people. I don't think I've ever noticed something so similar that you're like, she cribbed that from somebody, and even and like you said, tropes, cliches, stuff like that, there's always going to be that moment where the amateur sleuth goes, what is this note on the floor, and picks it up. And I really wish my cat would stop right now. She is literally killing me with this tale. But yeah, so I think we're cognizant of each other's work, but I don't think anybody ever thinks of like, oh, that paragraph is really close to my paragraph. Like, that person stole it. Like, no, I don't think I've ever noticed that kind of going on. Could be wrong, but not in my experience.
When you were able to go to conferences, and did you ever participate in any cons or conventions, things like that, where you actually talk to fans, or talk to people, or were you more of the fan going to the conference?
It was definitely, because again, my poor book was released September of 2019, before the world
Before the
changed.
world, yeah.
So the only conference I ever went to as a published author was the Crime Bake in 2019, in Woburn at the time. And it's all people that I know through Sisters in Crime and Mystery Writers of America. So we're all kind of fans of each other. It's not like a rando from the street. Malice Domestic was going to be one of the first ones where I went as a panelist and did book signings and stuff. And that was going to be kind of the big thing. But then,
The world
COVID.
ended. Yeah.
And I did go to BoucherCon a few years ago, and that's a fan conference, like full stop. And it was awesome, because it's just every mystery writer you could possibly ever want to see. And it's like, oh my God, these are like my idols. This is so cool. And all of them are so nice. Like, I was like, R.L. Stine was there, and I'm like, Goosebumps was like my jam when I was in middle school. And he's like Mr. Cool, nice guy. And it kind of blows my mind that I go as a fan more than I go as a writer. I'm hoping with the second book coming out, maybe that'll change a little bit, where I'll start to feel more like one of them, the published author people. But I think I still feel like a little bit like a fangirl, and I'm kind of just writing fan fiction for myself. And so I can't wait for more conferences. I'm still a little wary of the crowd. So like BoucherCon's off for this year, but I think next year, Malice Domestic should be coming back. And like I said, my dad lives in Maryland, so I have places to stay down there and stuff like that, and all my friends. And so hopefully Malice Domestic in 2022 will be my publishing coming out party, so to speak.
So when you go to these conferences as a fangirl, who did you fan out the most over, other than R.L. Stine?
Kate Carlisle was one of my first ones. I was like, I've read every book, and I love you, and you're the best. And she was super nice. And then Sheila Connolly at the beginning. Oh, I don't know if you've interviewed a lot of them yet, but the Wicked authors, like Edith Maxwell, Barbara Ross, Sheila Connolly, Sherry Harris, all of them. They're just so nice every time I see them. And so I fangirl. I'm like, guys, you're great. I love you. You're awesome. Hank Philippi Ryan, who pretends to know me every time I see her. I don't buy it, but I still think it's the nicest thing she could be. So she's one of my other favorite. I love to hear her talk, and just her life has been amazing. So yeah, I fangirl a lot of the time. I'm kind of a nerd. And so I just get really excited for authors, even if I don't know them. And like, they just happen to have their first book at this conference and they talked about it on the panel. And I'm like, that sounds really interesting. And then going up to see them afterwards to be like, your book sounds really interesting. I can't wait to read it. Like, to me, that's one of the best things about writers conferences, to meet new people and also kind of fangirl a little bit to these new people who, you don't know if they get that shine all the time. So
Right.
yeah, I like that.
Do you remember the first time that somebody came up to you and said, "I really like your book. Will you sign it for me?"
Oh, excuse me. The pneumonia is acting up now. It's like, oh, yeah, there, a lot of times it's been through my Facebook group, Nicole Starting Lineup, where somebody will have read the book and they'll come on, either write a review, which is like primo, we love that, or she'll, one of them, Nikki, came on and she was like, I loved this book so much. And I was like, oh my God, somebody liked my book. Like, oh my God. Because all authors have imposter syndrome. We all think our book's the worst. Nobody's going to read it. And it's just going to be me and my 15 books in my house. And then just me crying, reading to my cats. Like, it's about baseball. And so when you get a review or somebody just reaches out of the blue to say, I really enjoyed this book. I read it at my son's little league game while he was practicing, like stuff like that just kind of gives you a little warm and fuzzy. My little Grinch heart grew 3 sizes bigger and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, I love that. I love that.
So let's
So
go back to your
more people
more
praise
people.
me is what I'm saying.
Right. So let's go back to your kind of writing process a little bit. Um, you're more of a pantser than a plotter. Do you ever find that you kind of backed yourself into a corner every once in a while because of that, or
Yes. I also find I have a lot of repeating days, like it's been Tuesday 3 days in a row. How did that happen? Or oh, I killed this in the second book. I killed this person one way in chapter 2, and then by the time the resolution came around, it was like a different murder weapon, and I was like, that can't be right. Like, wait, what did I do? And then I have to go back to page 1 and be like, oh, right, okay. Yeah, sometimes that's a little bit harder to remember. I've gotten better at, if I'm writing a chapter, I use readsy.com as my drafting platform, and it goes by, it's kind of like Scrivener for the writers in the room, that it goes by chapters. So I'm writing chapter 3 and I'm like, wait, did I say this in chapter 2? I can just pull that section and go, oh, I didn't write that. Okay, we're good. Let's keep going. I think when I first started drafting, I just wrote. And then, you go back for your first edit and you're like, yep, that's 3 Wednesdays. That's not how time works anymore, or at all. Murder, I always kind of know. I'm glad that I have a core set of characters, and I always kind of know who the victim is and who the murderer is going to be. And then it's just a matter of connecting that. And like I said, sometimes days, times, events get a little muddled, and then that comes out through editing. You're like, oh, we'll just make it a day later. It's fine. But yeah, I always kind of have the general gist of what's happening in my head. And then I just have to make sure I write 65,000 words to get that gist into a book.
so what's the how big was the biggest mistake or thing? What was it, just like maybe a paragraph, or did you have to go rewrite an entire chapter?
Well, this is interesting. This is about my process. So I drafted Murder at First Pitch in the summer of 2016, I think, 16. And it was like a 6-month process. And then I queried like crazy. Publishers, agents, everything. Didn't get any hits. Got a lot of like, oh, I like the idea, but like, meh. So I went back and I rewrote the whole thing in a different tense. So, or in a different point of view. So when I rewrote the book, I found a few places here and there where things were a little screwed up. So I think that kind of helped. By rereading it and rewriting it, it helped me clear up some of those big issues. With book 2, I actually did something different, and I printed out a bound copy of it. and I just read it like I was reading any regular book and just taking notes and saying, wait, was that the same name as the person? That's another one. Names are hard when it's like a tertiary character and
Mhm.
you're like, what did I name that father? I don't remember his name. Mr. All right. So I did it a little different with book 2 to try to get a little bit more um, cohesiveness with it. I really would like to do what big authors do, which is create a book Bible with all the character names, all the dates, all of everything that happens, so you kind of can just refer to it back. But
Mhm.
I'm a little lazy sometimes, and I also have that job thing, so that kind of screws things up too.
One thing Leslie Wheeler mentioned the other night was when she reads it out loud.
Yeah,
And especially now where her Rattlesnake Hill is an audiobook form, she's listening to it. And she mentioned that she goes, wow, I said that phrase a lot. Did you find when you read the second draft or you read through, do you find like, okay, you know what? I've used this same phrase for the 20th time. I'm going to change it.
I use a lot of the word so, but I think that's because I also use it in real life a lot. Like I'm always like, so blah 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 blah. And then so blah 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 blah. So I find like my own speech affectations coming in, and I'm like, all right, we got to take some of those out because people are reading it. They don't want to read all those extra ums and so's. Um, I haven't been brave enough to do the voice where it reads it to me because I'm a little nervous about it, because it's kind of like listening to yourself talk. Like
Mhm.
I love doing these and talking to people, but I hate watching them back. I put it on my website and I just never watch them because I'm like, I hate my voice. I hate that. Yeah, whatever. Insecure writer. Um,
So you're never going to watch this then.
I might. I'm gonna make what I do is I make my mom watch it and tell her which. I'm like, Mom, tell me what you thought, like, or somebody else, tell me what you thought. My favorite thing about doing these interviews is on my website. People can follow this my hair journey. I've gone through many a colors of hair since I've started this writing world, and this is just another iteration. So that's kind of fun that's what I like to watch, my outfits and my hair, and I go, okay, that's good to know. But I hate listening to my own voice. So I don't know, the reading out loud thing, that's what everybody says to do. And I'm very chicken about listening to my own words back. Like, I don't know. I know it's not my voice, but it's my words. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
terrified.
Well, we'll get to this in more in depth in a little while. But what about audiobook? I mean, it's one thing versus, you hearing your voice read this thing.
Right.
But do you have an issue or problem with somebody else hearing somebody else reading it?
I don't know if I would be able to listen to it, but I have no problem with audiobooks. I'm trying to get this series in audiobook form because I have a lot of friends that are like moms, and they're busy. They can't sit down and read a 200-page book, but they're in the car waiting for the kids after school. They can listen to a book on audio. And like my mom, she's an audio listener. So I think there's some people that can and really do that. I am not the type that can listen to it because just again, I know I wrote those words and I don't, and I think a lot of authors are like this. We're very critical of ourselves. So I'd be like, I could have said that sentence better. I could have written that sentence better. Oh, I should rewrite book 1. Like just rewrite it completely.
Wouldn't that help though in future books though, knowing that? So, like I said with Leslie, she kept repeating this phrase over and over again. So
Yeah,
now she's more conscious of it when she does write that phrase again. Either she won't, or she'll change
right.
it, or just do it a couple more times. Wouldn't that? Don't you think that might help
Probably.
you in the future?
Oh, probably. But again, hashtag lazy. And also, um, I really just want the book to come out. And so I'm afraid that if I to it a few times, it would be like the never ending editing process where I'll be like, well, now I can change this a little bit. Oh, I can maybe change those, or oh, and do this. I know we all, as authors, we all have our crutches. I know some people use the word just a lot. I think I got another one was like, she exclaimed. Well, nobody really exclaims. So so you pick up words like that. Like when I do the secondary read through, I'll pick up on some of those words where I'm like, no, that's not the word I want. um I keep going, oh, I know Word has a voice dictation thing, just do it, Nicole, you can do it. And then I'm like, no, I don't want to hear it, I don't know. And plus then I'm watching TV at the same time and doing like 15 other things, so I don't
Okay.
focus on it, which is a me problem, not a not not a word problem. But
They said once you went through all your editings and stuff, you went and threw out queries to agents and
Mhm.
publishers and stuff. First, why did you go? Well, I guess just not just first, but why did you decide to go through the traditional publishing route versus the independent publishing route?
Yeah, I knew I always wanted to go through a traditional path, mainly for that editing process. For because I mean, I am a tech writer and I did study English and creative writing, but it's always nice to have another set of eyes on it. And I knew that I wouldn't be, because I know you've talked to Dale Phillips, who is like the savant of self-publishing, and he gets it right. But I know I don't have that same discipline. So I knew I always wanted to kind of get it in a traditional sense. I also like the idea of, you showed my trailer, but that's the extent of my like artistic skills in that world. So I wanted somebody else to worry about helping me with a cover and doing all this stuff. And I don't mind talking, so marketing is not a problem for me. But yeah, it's all that other businessy stuff that I really wanted to make sure somebody else was helping me with, because
Mhm.
I think it would have been over my head.
Well, let's talk about the social media and marketing. So I had mentioned that in Sisters in Crime, you're the social media liaison. What does that entail?
Basically, it's Twitter and Facebook currently. And it's just, if you're a member and you have events, or if the national organization is running a scholarship program, I kind of just nudge people to say like, hey guys, if you're a member, like check this out. This is really cool. Um, with Crime Bake, which is a Sisters in Crime and Mystery Writers of America kind of collaboration conference. I'm also that social media person who will say, okay, 10 days, we're going to have registration, get ready. Here's the updates, blah, 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 blah. But basically it's getting the information from members, posting, articles that they've been a part of, and kind of just keeping members aware of that, hey, we're here, if you need anything, reach out, one of us will answer. And kind of keeping us in the social sphere, I guess, keeping us
Sharing tweets and posts of people who are
sharing.
being interviewed at different bookstores. And
Well, my new, I'm going to put this out on this because this will be like accountability for me, is I'm trying to put together something for the membership to teach them how to use us as social media. So to tag us in, if, Dale Phillips
right.
is doing an interview with you guys, to make sure they tag SINCE, NE, stuff like that. Cause I think there's a lot of people in the mystery writer world who might not be as savvy with Facebook or Twitter. Although the new thing is TikTok, and I am out on TikTok. So I
Nope.
do not know. As a geriatric millennial, I do not do TikTok, and I will watch them, but that's it. So I
No.
think we're starting to, I know our current president of Sisters in Crime New England is looking to put together a little something where somebody else presents TikTok and maybe teaches us how to do it. But that's for the youth. And I'm not with the youth anymore.
As a geriatric feeling Gen Xer, I'm totally averse to any form of social
Yeah.
media. But running a business, especially like this, it's almost
Yes,
a necessity. And so I've
exactly.
had to give myself crash courses in everything, and I will not do TikTok either.
No. Of
But
course, I said that about Instagram too, and I said that about Snapchat, and then I'm on all of them anyway. So when TikTok's not cool anymore is when I'll probably take it up, when the
yeah.
when the Gen Zers or whatever they're called get rid of it.
Well, with you being averse to hearing your voice in your books, I'm the same thing with video. I just
Yeah.
don't do video. So you may see out of the 3 years or so that we've been open, you'll see maybe 3 videos that I've actually done because I don't do that. But yeah, so a crash course in social media. Uh, um, I was going somewhere with this, and now I don't remember. I don't
That's
remember.
okay.
Oh, tagging people correctly. When you were saying tagging sisters in crime, one thing that I'm trying to get across to a lot of local authors and stuff, it's like, okay, you need to let people know where
Hmm.
your books are.
Yeah.
Well, a big part of that is the social media thing, but the big part of that is tagging the store correctly so
Mhm.
that we see that we're being mentioned so then
Yep.
we can share on
To your
the,
people.
the tweets, the Instagram things, the
Yep.
Facebook posts. Yeah. So, and it's kind of an accountability thing too. If,
Yeah.
if we know that you're promoting your book at whatever stores it's at, we'll be more likely to
Yeah,
hang on to the book and keep giving it more of a
right.
chance. But, you know, if we don't know, or if you're not doing
Oh,
it to
right.
begin with, or we don't know that, then, your book sits on the thing for
And then it's
a
gone.
year.
Yeah.
Especially with us, we have a consignment program. Here,
Okay.
take your books back. "Oh, but
Yeah.
I've been promoting you." Well, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, right.
So,
I didn't know that.
yeah, definitely, getting people to know how to post
Right.
correctly.
And I
Again,
think
and I'm not an expert on this either. So,
no, no. And I think that's the new era of promotions for books and stuff, that it is a lot more on the author than it is on the publishing house or the big five or whatever. I think they depend a lot. You have to, that was the thing I did have to learn, is I have to be more self-aggrandizing. Like I have to speak into the void and be like, I'm an author, come look at my book. It's hard to want to sell yourself, but I think now in this new publishing world, I think there's so much out there that you have to be that person to go like, hey, hashtag cozy mystery, here's a new one, like check it out, whatever. And that's why you have to learn how to do, Canva or the book trailers, or tagging bookstores and going to bookstores and doing all these events. I'm doing a craft fair at a dog park tomorrow. Like you kind of have to just put yourself into places that you didn't think you would need to before, just to get yourself out there. And I think that's when you meet the best people too, is the person who didn't know they wanted a baseball cozy mystery until they took their dog to the dog park and they're like, hey, that looks good. Like, let me check it out. And I think that is on the author a lot more than it is on the bookseller or the publicist or whomever. I think you need to learn to sell yourself. And that's why these things are great, like these interviews, because you really do feel like you get to talk to people. And that's nice. I like to talk to people.
what are what are some of the other marketing materials that you do when you did, before the world
Events.
shut down? Yeah,
Yeah.
or that you, um, there's a couple that we have in the store. One, she used to leave a copy of her book along with her contact information, a business
Yeah.
card, bookmark, at airports
Smart.
with a little note, "Hope you enjoy
That's
this
smart.
book."
That's smart.
So she would do that. We have another one that we have in the store where he has, besides the bookmarks and stuff, he has pins
Yeah.
with, um, well, it's the books about dragons, and so it's
Okay.
little dragon
Cool.
pins. So I make sure I got to remember every time somebody buys one of those books.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to run over to the drawer and grab a pin to belong. What are some of the marketing materials that you?
I love bookmarks. I'm a big bookmark. I take them from authors. I live with, they're scattered all over my house, everywhere, in bookshelves, books everywhere. So I do a lot of bookmarks at events. So like tomorrow when I'm out actually with people, I have baseball bracelets and like just little baseball-y type things. But I try to, my new thing is I saw somebody on an event where have a mug that says like, ask me about my book. And I'm like, that's a great idea, because you just sip your coffee and somebody's going to go, you got a book? Like, and you just have to, even if I don't, I have business cards and I like always point people to my website and say like, take a look. And if you like what you see, cool. If I'm not your cup of tea, that's fine too. But maybe you know somebody who would like this kind of material. So I think, yeah, bookmarks to me are always big hits, because people get, oh, the new thing I have is a word search that I'm going to be handing out tomorrow that's based on my book. So that was kind of fun to do. Wasted a lot of printer ink at my own house. Usually used to do that in the office, but that's all right. I'm going to get that out for people. So just fun things like that, where it'll help remind them, oh yeah, this is the baseball girl. That was the other reason I used to dye my hair all the time, is so that people go, oh, the pink haired lady, that's right, she wrote a book, kind of thing. So this will be the first one with a normal hair color. We'll see what happens.
You ever think of it? I just thought, what about, little baseball bats, either
So
plastic or wooden, that you can write the name of the book on, or
yeah,
maybe
I
your website on, or something?
I keep looking. Hashtag cheap. So that's why I keep looking to see what else I can get. I think as we open up more and I start to do more of these events, some stuff like that'll happen, like a little bit more fun, like little mints with the baseballs on it with the name of the book and stuff like that. All those kinds of good things. They'll come. It'll come
Yep.
once the world is back to normal
You
ish.
meant you mentioned website too. How important do you feel that it is to have a functioning website?
I think it's super important. And I mean, as we've talked about, I'm not the best tech savvy person, but I kind of love my website because it has everything you need. It has my events. It has, how to get me, how to get all my socials, it gets updated, it has all the videos. So if you're like, what did Nicole sound like in 2019? You can look at it. Or when is she going to come to my town or whatever? I think for an author, it's vitally important, because if you're handing out a bookmark, they're not necessarily going to go, buy the book right away, but they might want to say like, oh, I wonder what more about her. Like, let me find out.
Right.
And they'll go right there and say, oh, that's her bio, that's who she is, and those are some pictures. Cool. And then I also think the newsletter is important in that too, where people can get a sense of you once a month. They get an update, and it brings you into the world of the author. And for me, when I get an author newsletter, I like to know what everybody's doing. Again, it's the nosy thing. I just want to know what everybody's doing with their lives, and like how they're getting on and things like that. So I think, if as a reader, I like to be in that world of the author. And I think websites and newsletters are vital for those. But not too many newsletters where it's like every week, and then you're like, all right, I get it. Once a month is good.
We used to do a once a month thing, and then I ended up changing the one we're with, because the other one integrates with our POS system, so
Okay.
that every time I put new customers in, it would automatically populate. But I didn't like the way the design was. It wasn't user friendly for me.
Yeah.
I guess maybe also I just didn't want to try, because I had used the other one for a year and I had everything all set up, and I didn't want
Right.
to start over again. So I ended up going back to the other, and I haven't done newsletters really since, which is something I need to do. But the
Yeah.
one thing I do like about your website is you do have the book links where you can get your book. Although I disagree with the number one on the list.
I know. I know. I know exactly where you're going, and I agree.
But
But
I
yeah,
do like, Barnes and Noble. It's at least a brick and mortar store,
yeah,
but you do have your favorite indie, your favorite indie bookstores that you're in. You list those, Goodreads, but you also have bookshop.org and
yeah,
your affiliate link to them. I love seeing that, and that's, really appreciated by us,
yeah,
me and the other. And again, letting people, indiebound.org is another one that people can
yeah.
look up to see who has your book too.
And I
So
try to tell people too, I'm like, if you have a store that you love, just go to them and say, I want to order it. And they'll order it for you, and then you're supporting your own store. And
mhm.
that's amazing to me, because you live the dream, because I also eventually want to own a bookstore at some point. Nicole's Book Nook has always been circling in there. But yeah, I think and I want to be able to support bookstores, because they're so cool. Like, come on guys, it's a store full of books. Can you not? It's so great.
Well, it's like Bookshop. They support us
Right,
by remitting some of the sales that go through our
right.
links to them in sales. Back to the audiobook thing, you mentioned your mother does listen to audiobooks. We
Mm.
we have that as well with audiobooks. It's called
Okay.
libro.fm.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
They're really great to work with, so something to think about when you do decide that you want to do
Yeah.
the audiobook thing. um, Maybe get your mother to
No, that's
switch.
good to know.
And they have everything that the competition
Well,
has.
she let me
um,
be fair. She doesn't use the competition. She uses library. We go
oh
through the
yeah.
library for her
Yep.
audiobook. So
Yep.
still
Okay.
still good. Yeah.
Still good. It's all good. So, but on the thing of audiobooks, when you do decide to get your first book in, or any of your books in audio format, um, let's go murder at first pitch. It's
Yeah.
already out, so you're working on that. Do you have an idea in your mind who you would want to be the narrator? First of all, who would be the narrator? Is there a famous person, or do you know of
Well,
any audiobook narrators that you would love to hear their voice as your book? And then,
I actually have a woman on in my Facebook group who is from New England, and her voice would be really good for if you wanted that salty New England kind of narrator. Famous person, I don't even know. I want to say Amy Poehler, because she'd be super funny, but she also does a wicked good accent because she's from up here. So it'd have to be a Massachusettsian or New Hampshirean
mhm.
person. But yeah, so the woman I sent this woman to my publisher, and they're like, oh, we're looking at things now. So I'm hoping that's a good sign, and hoping that we can get either her or somebody really cool. I don't think it'd be a famous person. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's fine.
There's one woman, I hate this when it happens. She's a famous comedian. from New Hampshire, from Manchester. Um, Dark hair. Anyways, I think she might be. If you're talking about accents and things like that, because she's
Okay.
got definitely Sarah Silverman.
Oh yeah, she'd be good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So if
I'll
all
reach
right,
out to her people. I'll just
yeah,
reach
yeah,
out.
have her people call your people,
Yeah,
and
I'll just contact her.
yeah. So now, if you could have your book turned into a Hallmark movie,
Have I thought about this? I've thought about
you
this.
thought
Yes.
of it. I think everybody, all the authors have thought
Yeah.
about this. And who would you want to play? Have you thought about who would play your major characters? And was there any influence on the development of those characters based on those movie actors?
So the only actor, it would never happen because this is like pie in the sky. The main character, the love interest, security guard, helper guy, Davis in the book, he was definitively based on Chris Evans, Captain America, from the beginning. I always pictured Chris Evans when I wrote Davis. Chris Evans will never do a Hallmark movie, but if he gets, things happen, things go south, maybe he'll want to be Davis in his movie. Madeline was always fun because I identify with Madeline, but one of the people that I love is Maggie Lawson from the TV show Psych. She played Juliet. If she dyes her hair dark and chops it off, she'd be perfect. And then the brother, Ben in the book, John Krasinski, because another good Massachusetts boy, kind of that clean cut all-American. And then Eliza is the comedian Jen Kirkman, who I always, if the woman who inspired it, Lizzie, is not available, Jen Kirkman would be perfect for the character of Eliza, I think. Not that I've thought about it.
No room for no room for like Matt Damon or
They're a little too big. Matt Damon, he's getting a little long in the tooth. As a geriatric millennial, he might be a fun detective Stevenson, like with that whole kind of trench coat, hat, Law and Order, Notebook. It'd be kind of cool to have him and Ben be like the detectives. Like Ben would be the strong, silent one, and then Matt would be the detective Stevenson. Oh, I like that. Yep, I
well,
like
there you
it.
go.
Casted.
So you only got 5,000 words of your third book done, so
I know.
you
Oh my
find
god.
a way to write them in as side characters or something, or
I
maybe
know. There you go,
side characters
Matt.
to lead into the fourth character, into the fourth
Ben, you
book.
have a new girlfriend. You're gonna need to make some money. Here you go.
So when you get into your third, fourth book in a series, would you like to see it as some sort of not Law and Order, but
Yeah.
well, yeah, like a Law and Order or a Rizzoli and Isles type series? Or
I always pictured it as a Hallmark movie, kind of like the ones they have now, like the Joanna Fluke stuff, and just as like a one-off, an hour and a half contained movie, just because it's clean, it's light, it's fluffy, it's set in a, it's pretty, it's a ballpark, you can't really go wrong. Get some baseball players. Everybody loves a baseball player. So yeah, I've always kind of pictured it in my head as it being something like that, or like a mini series type thing. Never a series like a Rizzoli and Isles or a Bones where it goes like just goes on and on and on and on and on. Although that'd be cool too. I mean, I wouldn't turn the money down. If they're like, hey, write X number of series, I'd be like, sure,
sure.
figure it out. I'll figure it out something.
You think big screen rom-com type thing, or just a TV Hallmark
It would really be
channel?
awesome. I think there's a new genre of movies where they are for the big screen, but because of the pandemic, they're premiering on like video on demand. Like that's kind of where I see this kind of a very clean, light mystery. Like not a lot of blood, sex, violence. So I mean, you're not getting your bang for your buck, I guess. No pun intended. It would definitely be a small screen thing, I think. Although, again, if they want to put it on the big screen, I'm not going to argue with them. Movie producers, like I won't argue. I'm very easygoing. I will do whatever you want. Change the character's name, fine.
As long as you can get Chris Evans, right?
Oh yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I alone now?
So, so we're just about out of time. But last question: what is your all-time favorite novel, any genre, and what are you reading right now?
Okay. What I'm reading right now, I did it. I was telling you at the beginning of this, I've been battling pneumonia for a week and a half, and I'm finally on the upswing, but I finally got to go to the library and pick up some new books. So I'm reading, it's the Catherine Howard book by Allison Weir about the Henry VIII's, what was she, the fifth wife, Catherine Howard, the scandalous queen. Really into that. So that's what I'm reading. That's what I'm reading, book. On my Kindle, I'm reading a couple of advanced copies of The Hollywood Spy by Susan McNeil, which is the Maggie Hope mysteries, and a couple of other mysteries. And then Reticence by Gail Carriger. Those are the three that I'm reading right now. There's probably more that I'm reading because I'm one of those, I'm a polyamorous book reader. My favorite, so the book that got me into English, got me into wanting to read more was To Kill a Mockingbird from the beginning. I read it in 9th grade, just was like blown away, read it several times since. The mystery that got me involved was And Then There Were None, Agatha Christie. The movie is great, the BBC production, it's just twisty, and I kill for an island mystery when they're just all locked in one room. My favorite current series, I feel like I have a lot of stories. My favorite current series is The City of Brass by, I don't know if I can pronounce her name, but it's a fantasy kind of Middle Eastern, Egypt fantasy trilogy, and it's great. So The City of Brass, and I think the final book was The Empire of Gold. I'm looking at it right now. Kingdom of Copper and Empire of Gold. Primo. Some of my favorites.
Actually, I do have one more question. Way back, way towards the beginning, we were talking about cozies and fantasy. Do you ever think about in a future writing, or maybe something to think about? Because we had talked to one writer who was starting to kind of mix genres.
Yeah.
You ever think about doing some sort of cozy mystery like Frodo?
Yeah.
From Lord of the Rings,
I would
where he
love that. I do have one book that's kind of, it's about 10,000 words. It hasn't really fully, but it's kind of like a cozy fairy tales. It's the fantasy world is she's in charge of the fairy tale library. Her grandfather leaves her this legacy. So all the fairy tale characters are real. So Little Red Riding Hood and they're dying and she has to figure it out. So there's germs of ideas. And I think now is the best time to write those because people are so creative and they're out there. People are writing cozy mysteries set in like, the elven world. And it's just,
well, I was just going to say some little bumbling garden gnome,
yeah.
innocent garden gnome, and now this
Fascinating.
has to battle the evil witch or this
Fantasy
fairies
authors,
are dying or
I
something.
am so in awe. I keep trying to be one and I'm not, because they're just amazing at world building, magic building these things, and like maps. Oh, I love a map in a book. Oh, I'm trying. My friend who did the tarot cards is putting together a map of Abington for me, a little, because I kind of just want one in my book. I'm like, it's cool to put a map in a book. Yeah, I think that genre I would be all in if somebody wrote that book. If I wrote that book, I'd be so excited. But we got to get through book 3 first.
Right.
We got to focus on the series.
Kat Scully, she's a fantastic fantasy world map maker. She's got a great book out, a couple good books out too, in the thriller sort of horror writers thing. But she's also a map drawer. So on that note, though, thank you very much, Nicole. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Awesome.
We'll get you in the store eventually.
For sure.
Hopefully soon.
I got lots of Asselins in New Hampshire to bring over. So
good. Yeah, we're shooting for the end of summer, early fall to start having really in-person events. Yes, we'll definitely keep our fingers crossed. So, but again, thank you everybody for joining us here on Facebook and everything. And again, her books are available through herbookshop.org, your local bookstore. Give me a call, I'll get them. We will have them in store eventually, and of course I'll post when we do. And then hopefully we'll get some have you in for a book signing. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you for having me.
I'll work on getting Chris Evans.
Yeah, I had such a good time. Thank you so much.